this is Jabron.
And Kim.
And welcome to another episode of Through the Vine, our weekly series where we give you the freshest stories we pick straight from the Vine on the latest in influencer marketing. This week, we have some really interesting stories to share with you guys, including some recent statements from Keith Weed, CMO of Unilever, as well as catching you guys up on some updates to Instagram API, and maybe a little bit of something about Giphy as well. Starting us off, last week, CMO of Unilever, Keith Weed, made some pretty strong statements against platforms like Facebook and Twitter, saying if they didn't do more to curb toxic and divisive content, then he would direct his team to actually pull funding from those platforms. We have to admit, we can't be lying to ourselves that, because of the current kind of laissez-faire attitude of the market, of the ecosystem, that definitely can lead to toxic outcomes. However, what we're really going to be seeing is a lot of these companies actually start to be using more influencer-based content, because with influencers, you can control context. Right?
Exactly. And from a creator's perspective, this is great news because as a creator, one of the biggest key pieces of a sponsored piece of content is the authenticity behind it. So if a brand is investing revenue and dollars into you to create awesome content with brands that you already love, it's just better news for creators and it gives you more control with your content. So I think from a creator perspective, this is actually awesome.
Influencers equals positive content. When you team up with influencers that share your brand values and share your brand ideals, that creates positive, engaging content that fans will love. Unlike with banner ads, with influencers, there's really no room for divisive and toxic content, because when people look at an influencer, they already know what the influencer is all about. That's why the influencer grew their brand. They're communicating what they believe in and what they feel, and so when you team up with an awesome influencer, everybody wins. Okay, so next up, so this is something interesting that I saw, that Giphy is actually hiring, it has like an in-house studio now to, create GIFs and spread through, because I read this one report, so it was on Business Insider, so for millennials and Gen Z, actually private messaging apps are like Snapchat, like WhatsApp, like Facebook Messenger, are actually starting to take some dominance over public social media. It is something interesting to watch out for, right? And so I guess from a creator perspective, when you are creating content, what should creators be sort of more intentional about as they build their profiles?
Yeah, it's always super interesting to see new platforms take shape, because I think any influencer or creator can take that as an opportunity to continue to build their brand presence, the visuals behind your content, being very intentional and thoughtful with the content that you're putting out, because essentially that's a reflection of you. So I think platforms like Giphy just give you another opportunity to share that visual content in a different format. And we all love memes, we all love Giphy, so I think it's just an opportunity to have further engagement in a way that maybe Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat don't necessarily allow.
Right. And thinking about what brands and agencies can take away from this, when you are working with influencers, I even see this all the time when I'm browsing through Giphy app. People will already organically make GIFs of some of their favorite influencers, and so when you're creating influencer content for your channels such as Instagram and YouTube, also think about content like one-off content that you can either include in some shots in those, or even just Giphy content. It's GIFable content itself. This is something that is still very much in formation, but definitely be paying attention and maybe even try to think about adopting some of these kinds of thoughts and strategies into your future collaborations with influencers moving on. So we all love change. Platforms like to change all the time. As we mentioned earlier, a lot of platforms are really thinking about how to stop the spread of bot accounts, fake followers, things like that. One of the platforms that are doing that pretty actively is Instagram. And so Instagram is making some pretty dramatic API changes to their platform that I think all brands and even influencers should know about. And it's gonna probably start changing entirely by the end of 2020. So definitely be more careful about that. And basically, from what I surmise, is that in order to start gaining lots more data and lots more insights, this happened with Facebook a while ago when Facebook encouraged a lot of brands to switch to business profiles. And while it might have taken a hit in sort of the newsfeed algorithm, it provided so much more insights and data into that brands can look into. And so they're kind of trying to replicate that and mirror that with Instagram. And so this goes double for creator, this goes double for brands. But in order to start unlocking some of that insightful those analytics and insights content, you're going to have to be switching to an actual business profile from there. And so in terms of the pros and cons, what do you think there?
I think it's a super smart move for a creator to switch their account over to a business profile. There's definitely pros and cons to it, and I think the cons are certainly around the ambiguity of the algorithm and how it might impact where your content's placed on your Instagram feeds for your followers. But I think the pros definitely outweigh that. You have the opportunity to connect your Instagram account to multiple Facebook pages, which is super cool, first of all. Mm-hmm. Second, you have the ability to start running targeted ads. So if you want to start marketing your Instagram feed to people that you think might be a potential follower of you, it's cool to have that option as well. And last but not least, it's awesome to have the data behind your posts. As a creator, you guys know it's super important to understand who is receptive to the content that you're putting out there. So like I said, pros outweigh the cons for sure. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and you want that data if for brand marketers or for agencies who are working with Instagram influencers. Definitely, sort of kind of I would say recommend that maybe you switch those business profiles, because if you are an influencer that actually has influence, you're not going to experience any sort of blowback from switching to a business profile. Really, this is going to affect those Instagram influencers with tons of bots, and this is actually going to encourage Instagram users to actually create an engaging, authentic fan base. So switching to these business profiles is going to be very, very beneficial, I think, for both influencers and brands.
Definitely. And I know we mentioned last week, sometimes it's nerving when there's changes made to platforms, but I think with this particular change, it's a really smart move. And kind of as you mentioned, Gibran, as long as you are kind of following those good behaviors as an influencer and you don't have fake followers, then there's nothing to be afraid of.
And that's, I think, episode 3 now of Through the Vine. So we'll see you next week for episode 4. This is Gibran.
And Kim.
And have a fantastic week.
Bye, guys.